Good evening, good day, good morning, whatever time you're watching this. My name is Brooke Niswander, and this is Starstruck Parenting. If you're wondering why you should listen to me, that's a really good question. Let's just say I always wanted to be a dad. Even when I was little, I never knew my dad, you see. And my mom, she told me later on when I grew up um, that anytime or she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd tell her, I want to be a dad. Okay, and this has been an ongoing theme throughout my life. I always wanted a dad. I missed having a dad. To the point that as a child, I would point at strange men in the supermarket and ask, is that my dad? I had a stepdad for a few years, and it was good. He was supposed to adopt me, but never did. And then when him and my mom split up, he basically disowned me. So again, you know, that desire to have a father, but more so out of that came the desire to be the best dad I could ever possibly be. Okay, and I have been dad to kids that are mine and those of other people. Okay, I currently have 3 children. One of them is my blood son. He is 13 now. Um, I've been a single dad. I raised him on my own for 5 years before I met the woman who's now my wife. My youngest daughter, she's 11, super high anxiety, and ADHD, and then my oldest, he's 19, is high functioning autistic. Okay, I have run the gambit when it comes to kids. I am a certified coach. Now, that may mean little to you, that may mean a lot. To me, what it means is that I have the ability and the knowledge and the expertise to help people overcome the problems that they're having in their life, whatever those may be. Okay? And I want to focus on helping parents, especially dads, because I'm a dad, but any parent, you know, get through those hard times. We are not going to get through parenting without making mistakes. It is not going to happen. That's totally impossible. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make lots of mistakes. And that's okay. That's how we learn. That's how we become better parents. I'll tell you right now, I make mistakes today. I do. They're not the same mistakes I made in the beginning. They're not the same, or they're not the same mistakes that I made 2 weeks ago. As long as we learn from our mistakes and we grow, then all we can do is become better parents. It's the way it's going to work. Now, I'm hoping that you're here today because you want to become a better parent. Maybe you have a hard case. Maybe, you're an absentee father. You don't get to see your kids, and you want to know how to deal with that. I've been an absentee father. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. This is an introduction today to my YouTube channel. My goal is to go on here and bring you content once a week. Okay? So I grew up on a small island, right? That whole it takes a village to raise a child. I got to have that village to raise me. I never knew my dad, but there were always people around to guide me and mentor me and show me the way. Okay, my mom was a single mom. We were not well off. She was a care aide and helped take care of the local native chief. So our freezers were filled with salmon. And from my stepdad, after they split up, because I have two sisters that were born to him, or born with him. They're his blood. Anyway, so they were there, and so when I lived with him, we had a deer farm, so we would have venison and we would have salmon and we would have whatever else my mom could pull together. There were weeks that I ate salmon 4 or 5 nights a week. And so as I grew up, I did not want to eat any cooked salmon. But I digress. Growing up on that island and having all of those people to help raise me, I I grew up quickly. I grew up well. I was a good boy. I became a good man and I had good intentions for my life. Um, at 20, 19, 19 or 20, I got together with a woman who was 10 years older than me and had a little girl. And I had like fallen in love with her and her little girl, and I wanted to raise this girl on my own, or not on my own, but with her. And that was my first long-term relationship, and it lasted about 3 years, and it fell apart in a total mess. And because I had such strong parenting genes, instead of making a clean split of it, we had lived together in the penthouse apartment on her dad's apartment complex, and so I moved to the apartment next door. Bad idea. Um, but it was one of those mistakes that you learn when you're young. And so when things got really bad there, I ran away. And I ran away not only from her and that relationship and my past and where I was, but I was in pain and I wanted to get rid of it. And so I got into drugs and alcohol for a number of years. And this is what happened to me at 29. So I think that was about 23 that happened, that I decided to leave where I grew up. And at 29, I was working in this inn, and I got a message from my chef, from an ex, somebody who I had had a summer fling with, and it was a message that I had a son. And here is how the universe works, so strangely to bring me to my child. She had called a cell phone number that I had had 2 years prior. It was out of service. I did not have that phone number. But as fate may have it, that number was given to one of the girls that I worked with. And so she got the phone call and gave the message to the people at the inn, and the chef gave me the message. 2 weeks later, I was on my way from small island off the coast of Vancouver Island to the lower mainland to meet my son. Him and he was beautiful. His mom and I even tried to make things work, but we were never meant to be together. So opposites. But the blessing that came out of that is I got a little boy. And so after that month of us trying to live together, I went and found another place and was there. And then one day his mom asked, basically, she called me up and told me I needed to take him because she couldn't handle him. And I took him, and he lived with me for 6 months before she took him one weekend and took off with him. And I didn't see him again for 4 years. 4 years later, and you know what, before that same year, I realized, because even though I had court papers that said he was supposed to live with me, I realized that because of my alcoholism and my drug use, I was of absolutely no use to him as a father in that moment. So I went and got help. I got clean and sober. Grateful to say I'm 8 years sober now. That was 10 years ago. So I was sober for a couple of years, had a relapse, and have been sober again ever since. But when I turned 1 year sober, I get a phone call. Actually, it was a message. And basically his mom wanted me to be a babysitter. And I was just so grateful to have my son back in my life. I wasn't questioning, and I just said, okay. And so I started taking him on weekends, and this went on from September until June. And in June, I got a phone call from his school, and it was the principal. And I was talking to him, or it was a message from the principal actually, because I'd been busy at the time the call came in, and they were wanting to know why he missed so much school. And I called him up. I'm like, "What do you mean he's missed so much school?" Well, he had missed in whole or in part more than half a year of grade one. He had been absent 56 times and extremely late, coming in, being dropped off after lunch uh, 34 times. And so when I reached out to his mom to talk about it, she didn't want to talk about it, and she would totally not address the subject. So I did what any you know person who really cares about their child would do, is I applied for custody. And we know that usually the court system is biased towards the mother. Any man knows that. And I think most of the women that may watch this do too. But what happened um, is over a period of time, she lied to the judge. The judge knew she was lying. She didn't show up for court. And the day that orders were set to be made, she didn't even bother to show up. She sent her dad. Now, what I had asked for is the agreement that I had placed before the court was that my son would live with me. Friday night, I would drive him to his mom's house in another city. He would stay there Friday and Saturday night, and on Sunday in the evening, I would go and pick him up. This was at no cost to her. The courts thought it was a great idea. But what happened is once they assigned me or gave me custody because she wasn't there, and the courts saw what a good dad I would be, and obviously saw that this was not a good situation for him where he was. She really didn't like that, and so she took my son, and because she'd had him out of town at the time, and basically abducted him. I actually had to go and meet the RCMP at the north end of Vancouver Island to get my boy back, and he'd been made to hide in a closet for over 8 hours. Hadn't eaten in 24 hours when we got him back. The last time he saw his mom, she was being put in the back of a police car. And so there was several years of trauma that needed to be healed, right? That was 7 years ago now. And he is the sweetest boy. He has a new mom in his life, and he's opened up. Went through a lot of anger towards women in general and towards the woman who's now my wife. But he has healed and opened, and it is such an amazing thing. So there was 5 years where all I did, I was dad. I was dad, and I went to work, and I came home, and I took care of him. I made sure he had counseling. I made sure he had things to help him. And 3 years ago, I got together with the woman who is now my wife. We had known of each other for 10 years, but she had been married, and she'd gotten divorced a couple years before we got together. And so what happened is I gained 2 more kids that I spoke about earlier. And this family has a dad. Now, they have their biological dad, so I'm a bonus dad, which is really cool. So if any of you men are watching this and you are with somebody who has kids, my first piece of advice is don't ever try to replace their dad. You can't. You're not that person. But what you can be is the very best bonus dad ever, and it is a great gift to be in that spot. It is a gift to have those kids look up to you and to love you and to cherish you. That's huge. So if you have that opportunity, take full advantage of it. See, when I had my stepdad, or when my stepdad disowned me, I made the vow that no matter who was in my life as far as children went, if they were my kids, I would treat them as though they were my blood, whether they were my blood or they were kids that were my partner's blood. Okay? And I also treat other kids that I see in the same manner that I treat my own. All right? I know many times I'll be out with friends and their kids are doing something and I'm have no problem letting them know whether it's right or wrong, and letting them know that, hey, that's not the right thing to do. And I will tell you something. I have had one or two parents, I think, in all my life give me a hard time, but the majority of them thank me for helping them to raise their kids the right way. Like I said before, it takes a community. So, men, women, if you're watching this, let's build a community of parents that stand up for our kids, that stand up for ourselves, and raise our children with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you again next week.